Welcome back.
Production acknowledgement. Gustavo Gomez.
Producer and director. Okay, let's jump in. Seriously, is there anything quite like ice cream for just pure simple joy, that first taste?
Oh, absolutely. It's universal, isn't it? That cold, sweet, creamy thing just works.
It really does. And today, we're going to trace how we got here. We've got quite the pile of sources, history, articles, research, all about ice cream's journey.
Yeah, and our plan is to sift through all this material you've brought together, find the really key stuff, the surprises, the turning points, how it went from simple beginnings to this huge global thing.
Exactly. We're digging into questions straight from this research. Was Italy really where the creamy stuff started? Did presidents like Jefferson actually serve it? And, how did it get so varied and, well, everywhere?
It's going to be quite a trip. Centuries, continents, all focused on this one amazing dessert.
Right. So let's start way, way back, before anything we'd recognize as ice cream today. What were the earliest frozen treats? What do the sources say about the origins?
Well, the idea is incredibly old. The sources make that clear. We're talking ancient.
Like how ancient?
The earliest mentions seem to point to China, maybe around 200 BCE. Rulers enjoying snow, but flavored with things like honey and fruit.
Okay, flavored snow.
And then later, Tang Dynasty, maybe 600 CE, they were doing something a bit more complex, freezing mixtures of milk, rice, maybe even camphor packed in ice.
Whoa, milk and rice. That's getting closer, isn't it? Beyond just ice.
It shows that early experimentation, yeah. And then you look over at Persia, say 500 BCE to 300 CE, they were experts at storing ice. These structures called yakshals.
Yakshals. Like underground ice houses.
Exactly, which meant they could mix ice with fruit juices, saffron, rose water, making something called sharbat, kind of a chilled, icy drink.
Okay, so China's got flavored snow turning into milky slush. Persia has icy drinks. Roman emperors too, right? Nero.
Yeah, the sources mention him. 1st century CE apparently sent runners up mountains for snow, then flavored that with honey, nuts, fruit juices. So you see the pattern across these cultures.
Cold stuff plus sweet stuff.
Pretty much. But the key thing here, as the research highlights, is texture. These were all, icy, granular, think early sorbet maybe, or a snow cone.
Right, not the smooth, creamy texture we expect now.
Precisely. These are precursors. That creaminess needed a specific bit of science, and that seems to come later, especially from the Middle East during the Middle Ages.
And this involves salt. I read that somewhere.
That's the clever bit. Between the 9th and 13th centuries, Arab and Persian innovators really figured out the salt and ice trick, mixing salt with the ice around the container.
It lowers the freezing point of the brine. Right. Basic chemistry.
Exactly. Which means the mixture inside the container freezes slower, more evenly, you can stir it more easily, or even just let it sit. And crucially, it stops those big, crunchy ice crystals from forming.
So you get a smoother result. Game changer for texture.
A huge leap. This refined technique really improved things like sharbat, which, eventually gives us the word and the concept of sherbet.
Right, from sherba. And the smoother stuff might have traveled to Europe. Marco Polo.
That's a theory that pops up in the material, yeah. That he saw similar things in China in the 13th century and brought the idea, or maybe just descriptions, back to Italy.
Okay, which leads us nicely to Renaissance Italy. Is this where the creamy, milk-based stuff really kicks off?
Looks like it. By the 16th century, frozen desserts were definitely popping up in Europe, mostly for the aristocracy. But Italy, with its culinary flair, started adding milk and, importantly, eggs.
Eggs for richness.
Yeah.
And Catherine de' Medici, she fits in here somewhere.
She does. When she married into the French royal family in 1533, she brought her Italian chefs. They knew how to make these fancy flavored ices, which got popular at the French court. But the real breakthrough, according to these sources, seems to be Florence.
Florence? And Bernardo Buontalenti? Am I saying that right?
Buontalenti, yeah.
No.
Late 1500s. He was an architect, artist, but also apparently a brilliant cook. And he's often credited, in this research anyway, with creating the first real gelato.
Gelato. Okay. What made his different? Why is that the turning point?
Yeah, because his recipes were milk-based, often using eggs, sugar, flavorings. It wasn't just frozen fruit juice or syrup anymore. That milk fat, the egg yolks, combined with the freezing, it created something much denser, much creamier. That's the direct ancestor of our modern ice cream.
Got it. So Italy nails the creamy texture with gelato. Then it starts spreading as this super exclusive dessert.
For a while, yes. Mostly royalty, the very wealthy, through the 17th century. There's that story, maybe apocryphal, about King Charles I of England paying his chef a fortune to keep his ice cream recipe secret.
Wow, state secrets. But then someone makes it public.
Yes. Big moment in Paris around the 1660s. A Sicilian chef, Francesco Procopio de Coltelli, opens Café Procopé. And it's a public cafe, not a palace kitchen. He starts serving sorbet and gelato.
So anyone who could afford it back then could walk in and buy it.
Exactly. It's a key step in making it accessible, moving it out of just the royal courts.
Okay, so it's spreading in Europe, becoming a bit more known. Then it crosses the pond to America.
Right, 18th century, and it finds fans pretty quickly, even at the top.
Yeah, the presidential connections in the sources are really interesting.
Aren't they? Thomas Jefferson apparently loved it, picked up a taste for it, and a recipe while he was ambassador in France in the 1780s. His notes still exist, served it at the president's house.
Jefferson, the founding foodie.
Maybe. And then Dolly Madison, early 1800s, famously served this big strawberry ice cream creation at her husband James Madison's second inaugural ball. It was a real showstopper.
A statement dessert. But going from presidential parties to, every corner store, that must be the Industrial Revolution.
Totally. Mid-19th to early 20th century technology changes everything. The sources really hammer home refrigeration and pasteurization.
Makes sense. Keep it cold, make the milk safe.
Right. Refrigeration means you can store it, transport it without it melting. Pasteurization boosts safety and shelf life. Put those together and suddenly you can make it on a massive scale.
And mass production means lower prices, wider reach.
Bingo. First commercial ice cream factory opens up, Baltimore, 1851. And then America really puts its stamp on it with things like the ice cream soda in 1874.
A classic.
Right, the sundae, which pops up in the 1890s. And maybe the most iconic invention, the cone, 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis.
The edible container. Genius.
Right.
Okay, so we've tracked it from ancient snow, Italian cream, European luxury, American mass market, to now. It's global. What does that look like today, according to your sources?
Oh, it's incredibly diverse now. The material really shows how different cultures have adopted and adapted it.
Like what? Give us some examples.
We still got Italian gelato, of course, known for being dense, intense flavor, lower fat. Then Japan gives us mochi ice cream, those little balls of ice cream wrapped in sweet rice dough.
Oh yeah, mochi's great. Such a unique texture.
Totally. India has kulfi. It's denser, often not churned, slow-cooked milk flavored with cardamom, pistachio, and mango, almost like a frozen custard popsicle.
Kulfi is amazing.
In Mexico, you've got paletas, great fresh fruit popsicles, sometimes water-based, sometimes creamy, just bursting with flavor.
So much variety. It's clearly not just a Western thing anymore. And the market itself, it's huge, right? The numbers in your research were pretty eye-watering.
They really are. Current estimates for 2024-2025 put the global market somewhere around $90 to $100 billion. And still growing, like 5 or 6% a year. The sources say it's driven by a few things: more disposable income globally, people wanting fancier, premium, artisanal stuff. And a huge factor is the rise of plant-based options.
The dairy-free trend. That's everywhere.
Absolutely. Oat milk, almond, coconut. They're bringing new people in and just expanding the whole market. Plus, big growth in places like India, Brazil, Southeast Asia, what the reports call emerging markets.
Makes sense. Growing populations, more people able to afford treats. So who's actually eating the most per person? Does the data break that down?
It does, and there are some fun surprises. Looking at consumption per capita, the U.S. is way out in front. Something like 20 liters per person per year.
20 liters. That's a lot of ice cream.
It is. And the U.S. makes up about, 26% of the total global consumption? The sources suggest it's just so available. Parlors, supermarkets, fast food.
Okay, U.S. #1. Who else eats a lot per person?
New Zealand and Australia are right up there, both over 18 liters a year. New Zealand, strong dairy culture, right? Australia, well, it's hot. And they love their cafes.
Makes sense. But the list you showed me had a surprise. Finland. They're really high, like 14 liters. How does that work?
Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, despite the cold, the Finns apparently eat ice cream year-round. It's a tradition, not just a summer thing. Sweden's similar, also pretty high consumption, around 12 liters. Same kind of winter ice cream culture.
Eating ice cream in the snow. I love it. Who else is on the list?
Let's see. Canada's up there, 10, 11 liters. Lots of frozen yogurt, too. Denmark, around 9, 10. More of a summer thing there. And interestingly, Italy, home of gelato, is actually lower per capita than you might think, maybe 8 or 9 liters.
Really? Lower than Finland? Why is that?
The thinking seems to be that while Italians eat gelato often, maybe daily, it's usually in smaller portions, like a quick snack, not a huge tub, so deeply ingrained culturally, just maybe less volume per serving.
Ah, okay. Frequent small treats versus big bowls. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about just sheer market size, total volume?
China is massive there. Even though the per capita number isn't the highest, the population size means their total market is huge. Around $8 billion a year, the data suggests, and growing fast.
Yeah.
Rising middle class, Western influence.
Huge potential, and rounding out the top 10.
Japan, lower volume per person, maybe 5 liters, but their market is all about novelty. Wild flavors, limited editions, matcha, red bean, sakura flavor. Innovation is everything there.
That fits. Always unique stuff coming out of Japan.
Definitely. And the sources also give shout outs to places with really fast growth: Brazil, India, Germany, all seeing booms in different segments like premium or organic or traditional styles alongside Western ones.
Wow. Okay, so it's this global giant.
Mhm.
When we talk about making that much ice cream, what actually goes into it? Resource-wise, your material touched on this.
Yeah, it's quite a list. Starts with the base, obviously. It's traditionally dairy, milk, cream, butterfat, milk solids. That's your texture and richness.
And the alternatives.
Coconut milk, almond, oat, soy, cashew becoming really common.
Right.
Then you need sweeteners, sugar, corn syrup, glucose. They do more than sweeten. They help control ice crystals too.
Yeah.
Or honey, maple, artificial ones.
Right, and then stabilizers and emulsifiers, you mentioned those briefly. They sound important for texture.
Super important. The sources list things like plant gums, carrageenan from seaweed.
Yeah.
Those are stabilizers. They basically bind water, stop large ice crystals forming, keep it smooth over time in the freezer.
Okay, so less icy crunch.
Yeah. And emulsifiers like lecithin from egg yolks, especially in gelato, or maybe soy lecithin. They help keep the fat and water mixed together evenly. No separation, just smooth, creamy consistency.
Gotcha. The secret ingredients for perfect texture. Then flavorings and bits.
Of course. Vanilla, cocoa, fruit purees, nuts, chips, cookie dough, candy. Endless possibilities.
And making it all takes energy. Water.
Oh, yeah. Significant energy, mostly electricity, for freezing, churning, running equipment like homogenizers.
Homogenizers. What do those do again in the big factories?
Right. Basically, they force the mix through tiny gaps at high pressure, smashes the fat globules into microscopic, uniform particles, stops the fat separating out, makes it super smooth.
Breaking down the fat. Smoothness tech.
Yep. And lots of water for cleaning, cooling. Some fancy places even use liquid nitrogen for super fast freezing. Creates really fine crystals, unique textures,
And then you have to package it all.
which means materials. Cartons, plastic tubs, very common, foil wrappers, wooden sticks. It all adds up.
Okay, this list of resources. It makes you think about the environmental side, doesn't it? Making so much of this stuff globally, the sources flag some issues.
They definitely did. Traditional dairy farming is a big one. Land use, water use, methane emissions from cows. That's a significant environmental footprint. Palm oil, sometimes used, has links to deforestation. And yeah, all that single-use plastic packaging is a major waste problem.
It really puts a damper on the joy, thinking about that. Are there solutions? Does the research mention positive trends?
Thankfully, yes. The shift towards plant-based alternatives is huge, as they generally have a lower impact than dairy. There's also a push for better packaging, biodegradable, compostable materials, especially from smaller or premium brands. And some producers are looking at things like solar power for their factories.
That's good to hear. The industry is starting to respond. Okay, shifting gears to something lighter, but still from the research. The age-old question, what are the world's favorite flavors? Did the sources list them?
They did. A global top 10, and number 1 probably won't surprise you.
Has to be vanilla.
Always vanilla, followed very closely by chocolate. Then strawberry.
The holy trinity. Still reigns supreme.
Pretty much. After that, you get mint chocolate chip, cookies and cream, and chocolate chip cookie dough.
Those feel very American, but clearly they've gone global.
They really have. Rounding out the list are Rocky Road, butter pecan, coffee, and pistachio.
Nice mix. Classics and a few slightly more adventurous ones. One last thing I saw, the materials you shared even had tips for making it at home.
Yeah, just a little nod to how accessible it is now. Simple stuff like chilling your mix really well first helps make it smoother. Tips for trying it without a machine, how to stop it getting too icy. And the classic advice, Add your chunky bits like chocolate chips after it's mostly frozen, otherwise they sink.
Right, so what a journey. From ancient flavored snow to Italian gelato adding milk and cream, spreading as this royal treat, then exploding with American industry. And now it's this global behemoth, endless flavors, something you can even whip up yourself.
It's amazing, isn't it? Ice Cream's story really shows off human creativity, how ideas travel and change, all in the quest for something delicious.
Definitely makes you think differently about your next scoop. You're tasting history, science, culture, all in one bowl.
A little bit of magic, perhaps.
Yeah. And on that note, we'll leave you with a quote that was actually in the source material we looked at. It goes, "Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy ice cream." And that's pretty close.